I hope everybody is having a great day so far at the Broadcast Innovation Day 2023. It's a special event, not only because it always is, but actually Broadcast Solutions are also celebrating their 20th birthday today. So I wanted to say happy birthday to everybody at Broadcast Solutions, but also thank you so much for hosting this amazing event. My name's Chris Redmond. I'm going to be hosting this panel for you this afternoon. I'm the CEO of an organisation called Redholt. We run a division called OTT Red, focused on recruitment and human capital scenarios across a range of disciplines for broadcast, streaming, and OTT organisations globally. I'm here today because I've got a passion about the topic and the implications associated to human capital when it comes to the migration that we're trying to make to more cloud-based infrastructure and migration. Welcome to the panel today. We're going to be discussing centralized and cloud production from a producer's view. Now, what does that mean? I guess the big question is why. The answer to that, why, or maybe even indeed why not, is what these guys are going to answer. So let me introduce the panelists. First of all, we've got Moritz Mücke from Dyn Media, formerly Head of Innovations at Deutsche Fußballliga. Moritz, welcome.
Thank you.
And somebody who's fairly well known in the industry, Mr. Peter van Dam. That's a good thing, Peter. Don't worry.
Thank you.
CTO currently at Saudi Sports Company. Peter, thanks for making the trip here. I know it was a long one. And I know that this is a topic as well that you've been involved with for a long time. You were at Abu Dhabi Media before as well, and you've commented on the migration to IP and cloud many times. So I'm going to be really interested to speak to Peter about what he has seen in terms of the evolution of this type of technology and the moment that we're at. Let's start from a level setting perspective. From a production perspective, where does cloud production sit in the strategic list of your priorities, guys, for your companies in the short and long-term future? Peter, should we start with you?
For us, it's content. We need to have more and more content, and the content needs to be localized for our part of the world. So that means Arabic commentary, Arabic graphics, and the vast amount of new content we are acquiring, IPs we are acquiring. If we want to do all that in a traditional environment and in a traditional setup, it would be very costly, and it would take a long time to implement. Where in a cloud environment, the dynamics and the scalability is endless on one end, but it starts to become robust in some areas. That we still have this transition, that we still, for some very high-level productions, maintain the on-prem level services and distribution. We go more and more into a cloud-based solution where it's in the end not possible to do with the standard on-prem solution.
So in the question around where it sits in the strategic list of priorities, where is that in the stack at the moment for Saudi Sports Company? It varies a bit, but I believe we do now about 40% of the additional services in the cloud at the moment, and that ends up in about 150 hours to 200 hours per month, and in peak times a little bit more even. Okay. Moritz?
Yeah, so I can really just underscore what Peter just mentioned. I mean, Dyn Media is a very young company. We're just starting off, so we have the advantage of building everything from scratch. But that also means that we can now rely on services in the cloud that weren't ready maybe a couple of years before, because we don't have to have our legacy systems already in place, meaning that a lot of when we look at the entire value chain and not just at the pure production part, but also where is our media asset management, how do we do near live and post-production editing, we can completely rely on cloud services there because it helps us spin those things up quite quickly. It also allows us to make the necessary steps that we need to take in order to launch our platform and to provide the content to the fans that we want to serve. And additionally, once everything is in the cloud, you've got the capabilities of adding services to it, right? It's not just a transportation way, but if I have my content sitting in the media asset management in the cloud, adding additional services like let's say, face recognition, adding additional metadata to it, automating clipping out of that. So all of those additional services can be added quite easily in the cloud, which is why it's a very important part within our strategic set currently, and also going into the future will only become more important for us.
And Moritz, when you have had all of the conversations, I'm sure there must have been hours and hours of conversations at a strategic level about, the launch ambitions, where that might evolve to from a medium and then long-term perspective. How much emphasis did you put on being cloud-enabled from the start?
Yeah, I think it was the most important point that we've discussed right from the beginning. The question that we had was, do we find the right people, and are there enough people out there in order to have everything in the cloud right from the beginning? And also have to, coming back to Peter's point from earlier, is everything in the cloud already that far along that we can purely rely only on services in the cloud? And we've made the decision that based on the fact that there is a fixed launch date for us, and we need to rely on processes that are well known within the industry, that also the people working in this industry are familiar with, that we've gone in a hybrid approach and said, all right, the core component of the live production is not going to be in the cloud, but that's going to be might be moved in the future. But we made the conscious decision that everything around that is cloud native, and also we enable ourselves to move into the cloud at a later stage with the other components.
We'll talk about this more later on in the conversation, but that clutch control, that risk mitigation strategy in terms of having that hybrid model.
Yeah.
When you had those strategic conversation, talking about launching Dyn, do you envisage a moment in time where you'll get to being entirely cloud enabled, or isn't that even in the conversation yet?
It was in the conversation right from the beginning, but we also need to identify where does it make sense and where doesn't it make sense, right? I don't come out of the production world. I am a digital guy coming from a cloud perspective, right? So for me, it was always this scenario of having everything in the cloud right from the beginning, but also having the conversations with the people that need to work with all the different systems that need to produce a live content. For example, if I see a new setup where I say, all right, maybe we see 2 or 3 seconds of latency, I see that as something where people that are working together can find a way of making that work. It's not as easy and it's not as frictionless as it might be currently in the on-prem world, but it is something where I say if there is a need in terms of budgets or whatever in order to go into the cloud, there is the possibility of doing so. Yeah. However, there's quite a few things to do until launch, and there's quite a few things to do also afterwards. So what we don't want to happen is putting everything working on our product, because in the end it's not a tech show, right? We want to deliver a live product to fans that they can fall in love with. So we also need to be aware that the people that need to produce all those things feel comfortable producing it.
You've just made a really interesting comment, maybe a bit inadvertently there, but around being a digital guy coming into a production environment, not a production guy in a digital environment. And I think that that's highly indicative of the skill set that we're going into. Peter, from a Saudi sports company perspective, do you ever envisage, dramatically different environment from a macroeconomic, geographic and infrastructure perspective? What do you think about Saudi sports company becoming entirely digitally enabled or cloud enabled? Ever happen? Will it ever happen?
I don't think before my time I retire. Although I was visioning it a few years ago and it would work and it would go. But we have one important thing that is standards. And the most important thing are the people that make the content, because we enable these people to do things. And after 2 years going in the cloud and trying and testing and failing and testing and failing again, and it's much more on a production level and on a broadcast level. We see that there is a hybrid that needs to stay, and 3 seconds latency for you is doable in what you build up. 4 frames in what we do sometimes is a disaster. So We need to make sure that we can build a system where everybody can play in the moment they need to play. I think it's very important for an organization. They need to see what they want to achieve and where they want to put a cloud solution in place and where they want to put a real high-end on-prem solution in place. And I don't want to say that cloud solution is lower in quality. It's not. But it takes more time, and it takes still more time to look at where we're going to go to. But again, it's a standard. I don't want to, and this was the biggest part where we were looking at. We came out of this COVID part where everybody made programs with their phones, and it was acceptable because this was the time and this was the only thing that was there. But we should not take this as a new standard. We should keep our standard. We worked our whole life to build something up, and we should not lose this. And the cloud should not be a reason to let the standard down a bit. And I was very lucky when we started this journey in cloud that our end partner in playouts, both in OTT and in the linear playout, is MBC in Dubai, also a Saudi company, and they have a very high standard. I would say they are a traditional, old-fashioned broadcaster, but we still need them because they pointed out to us, guys, that is not correct, that's not correct. And it took us months to get up to a level only on delivering a signal that they said, fine, now we can put it on air. And I think this is very important in the overall talking about cloud and cloud implementation and integration.
It's a transformation, right? There are so many different levels, dynamics.
No, it's not a transformation. It's two worlds that are going to live together. And for a long time, they will live together, and we need to make very sure that we put the line right where cloud is interesting for us and where traditional not in the way of we build it till yesterday or the day before. Traditional means on-prem that we can control ourselves more and we don't rely 100% on one company that provides us all the services. And if you look at outside here, DOB that broadcast solution is building for South Africa. The technical room is like...
Yeah, I've lived in smaller apartments.
Yeah, but the technical room itself, it shows that it can go and it can go smaller, and this is where we want to go to, and then centralized technology in data centers, yes, but still with a high-end direct connection on a dark fiber solution. I can agree on that one. But saying now tomorrow we're going to completely transfer into the cloud, I wish. Then I was right a few years ago, but I was wrong a few years ago. So
well, I wanted to ask you about that, Peter, if we could sit on that point for a second, because 4 years ago at CABSAT 2018, you were on a panel with Darren Whitehead from IABM. And on that panel, when you were at Abu Dhabi Media, you said that at the time you were running proof of concepts around IP and virtualization with some telcos.
Yep.
And that you expected that within 3 to 4 years it would come. And then I find myself here on this panel with you when I was researching, thinking, well, this is your moment to reflect on how far along that line are we that you envisaged we might have come.
I was right. But for that service that we were testing at that time, and that was Playout. In Playout, I believe we are ready today to move this into the cloud. I hear a lot of companies that say, we're going to put our DR in the cloud, the disaster recovery. I'm like, why? Why would you do that? Then reverse it and put something small on a prem that you can push to everywhere when it really goes wrong. But use the cloud as your main. And that was what we did at that time. It was together with a telecom company in Dubai, Imagine, and I think away with the Shani's. And the proof of concept was amazing. Now, we took Imagine because our playout at that time on-prem was an Imagine playout, so it was fairly easy to put the whole fetch workflow and everything in place. But what I said at that time about playout, I'm 100% sure this is today should be the way forward. And companies like Amigi and some other companies show it very well that it's a standard thing. It exists. The only thing is a lot of people don't even know that it comes out of the cloud. It's no big fuss anymore for these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was a bit right.
Yeah, you were close.
A little bit right.
Do you think over the last 3 or 4 years that not only where we are is where you anticipated being, but has it been a rockier journey? Has it been tougher, or has it been smoother than you thought it would be?
I think more companies would jump in faster. Maybe COVID had something to do with it. And a lot of people don't really see the potential yet. because a lot of people don't really understand it. And the biggest part is the people that don't want to change because they're going to lose their jobs. And it's not true, because we need the people. We only need to reposition them because we're going to need people. But this is a big part of the evolution, that people are not really ready to step into that new world. And especially young people. I mean, we should be the guys that phase out, and we should be the guys that lose because we don't understand what these young guys are doing, but they're not ready.
It's a dramatic transformation of skill sets, right? You know, I think one of the things that we've spoken about, Moritz, to kind of bring you in on this point is, you know, legacy broadcast production engineering skill sets have got a totally different complexion to some of the demands of tomorrow. I mean, that must have been in your thinking, in your recruitment and human capital, in terms of building what you've now got for Dime.
Yeah, I think there are similarities, right? But there are also things that are different. Having a network knowledge, for example, is also still very relevant for us in the cloud, because you also have to build your own VPCs and the routing tables and routing system. All of that still is there. It just needs to happen in the cloud. But obviously, it's a different skill set having to bring a server into a rack, then spinning up an EC2 system, making sure that it doesn't communicate to the public internet, making sure that all the ports are closed, not setting all the security systems. So though there are different skill sets obviously needed, and we currently are in a phase, or at least I believe we are in a phase where there is enough knowledge out there how to set it up, but there is not enough people out there that have this knowledge already in order to push forward. But also, I think Peter's point was very well, or he made a very good point there on the topic of where we draw the line, also in terms of quality and so on. So there is not this point where I say, right, we don't need the people that do classical broadcast anymore, because that's not the case, because there are still productions out there that rely on very high quality, low latency, frame accuracy, and so on and so forth. But there are also other productions out there that need to be more cost efficient, where there's not this exact frame that needs to be there, because it's still a nice experience out there. And you've mentioned the R. The R is a topic, obviously, that you can build for on-prem, where you can build for in cloud. It's just that you need to understand where your costs lie and where you want to increase the cost.
Let's explore that point for a little bit with both of you, because, you know, the interpretation of benefit in one aspect is cost, economies of scale, cheaper cost, all that sort of stuff. But either of you or both of you notice a different reception to, you know, discussing the benefits of virtualization within the senior leadership teams that you're a part of? Are your peer groups and stakeholders, what's the conversation about the benefits and how they're recognized from different parts of the business?
On a financial point?
Could be financial, could be operational implications.
Well, in the organization I'm very happy because we have no legacy. So we start from scratch, we start from zero. We start with very young people that have a fantasy, and then they come to me and they say, how are we going to make this? And with that, we also have a financial model that is not really scaled yet. We have an advantage that we live in a country that is fast expanding and wants to show the young people or the people in Saudi Arabia what the country is about and sports about. So we have there maybe a different view on budgets and on financial support from governments and from other entities. But when I was still in Abu Dhabi Media, for instance, when we started to talk about other solutions and implement other solutions, the biggest problem was getting your CFOs on board and letting the CFOs know that it's not cheaper. It's not cheaper. It comes in small bunches, but it's not cheaper. For sure not. And again, there is the thin line of where we're going to move into the cloud and where it's needed or not. Within 4 days, you need to spin up a contribution network that goes to an insane amount of countries. Yeah. And that's the only way you can do that is in the clouds. Nobody is ready to go in a direction where you go from 2 takers to 128 takers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody wants to have another their own language, and everybody wants to have another way of giving it, and everybody wants to have another way of having graphics. So then the cloud becomes a no-brainer. There's no other way.
Let's talk about the vendors that are providing the product sets that facilitate this utilization of more cloud and virtualization type technologies. In the next panel, they're going to talk more with vendors. There's going to be a rich panel of individuals with lots of domain expertise about product development. But what's your perspective, guys, on how mature the current cloud-based production systems are? What's lacking today from creating a fully cloud-based end-to-end production environment?
A choice in a cloud supplier or provider. That's not really a choice. That's one. I mean, there are a few other ones, and I'm involved in some project where Oracle is massively in investing in, but it's for the moment a private project. But the only one we can go to is AWS services.
But not just the cloud providers.
Also
the software that enables that for the type of production environment.
Again, I think I was expecting much more from some big providers to jump into either a hybrid system or even a full system. I can freely say, for the moment, we base most of our all our cloud productions are based on Grass Valley. But again, we are not married with Grass Valley, and that's the advantage. We can jump tomorrow to any other supplier if there is a better service. And probably there will come better services, and maybe we can go even for a transparent where we do football with this one and basketball with the other one and swimming with the third one, because it all fits much better in. But I was a bit surprised that a lot of companies wait. They wait, but I'm not sure whether they're waiting for what or for who. But
why do you think they're waiting?
I don't know. Maybe because they don't believe in the cloud, and in one way they are right, in another way they are wrong. So it's a choice. I believe in the next year we're going to see a lot of new ones coming up. But again, for me as an old-fashioned broadcaster, I would still want to have some tools in my hand that I can work with. So I like these all-in-one screens, and it's fine. But I also like a producer, a director, a sound engineer, graphics guy that they can sit separately. They can sit in other parts of the world. I don't care, but I want to have all these boxes. And with that, I want to have a choice. Today, we are very limited. For instance, in graphics, we are extremely limited. We are a Viz-RT house when it comes to normal on-air graphics in our OB trucks and whatever. In the cloud, I don't have this, so I need to redo my whole package to one main provider that is in the cloud is singular. And I'm expecting more companies to come in that I don't need to pay this cost again to build a new package in another system. It's coming. It's coming very soon, but it takes time.
But there's also one good point that he mentioned, and that is, I think, exactly the case with a couple of vendors at least. This having the ultimate control over the product, right? If you build everything in a cloud system, there is obviously a certain amount of control that you have, but you're also in a shared responsibility model. You give some responsibility to a public cloud provider, right? The EC2 instance in AWS needs to run if your service runs on EC2, and you need to trust a different party that you are still able to hold your SLAs, even though you are not fully in control anymore. And I think that is also a challenging point from a mindset perspective. And I do can understand the fact that this is challenging from a provider that normally has everything in its control and can basically make it work by will.
So, Moritz, do you think that there is at least an early stage iteration of everything that's needed to make a fully cloud-based production environment at the moment? Or is there something specifically you can think of that they could pick up in the next panel that's lacking?
So take a look at the POCs around us, right? There are enough already cloud productions out there running obviously in POCs. Not yet they are from a fully quality perspective, but it depends. And that's what Peter mentioned earlier. It depends on what is the standard that you're trying to fulfill. What is really the the quality that your service needs to deliver. If I want to broadcast like third or fourth tier football match in Germany, I can do that in a fully cloud-based production without any issues. I can even do a Bundesliga match in the fully cloud-based, even automated if I want to do it that way. Is that the same standard that a top match has on a Saturday night produced by my former colleagues of Sportcast? It's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
And the broadcast people will most certainly notice a difference. The question is, at what point is the consumer still noticing that difference? Because that's what's all about in the end.
But I think where a lot of companies need to look at is the level of support, the type of support, and how you give support if you go to the cloud. An on-prem system, an OB truck, we will make it work. It will work. And we will call tomorrow morning, we will make a ticket. Yeah. We will make it work. Even if we would need to pull it all together. We put tri-axes together because a crane drove over 5 tri-axes and it worked for that race and we didn't have intercom and some things didn't work, but there was picture. In the cloud it's not, It stops and it's goodbye. And it's not AWS, It's never AWS. Till now, all the problems we had is not AWS. But then you get somebody on the line and I need to explain to him why I put the changeover, why I put this, why I put that, why I put that. Because he's an IT guy. Yeah. And I'm a broadcast guy. And I don't know what he knows. And he doesn't know what I know. But he needs to help me. Yeah. And that's sometimes very difficult. And I believe the level and the type of support that companies need to give and need to prepare for their clients is a bit different. And it was a struggle in the beginning, but I believe, again, in this case, GV picked up a lot. But it's a learning curve that also a lot of other companies, if they're going to go that direction, they really need to look at having that proper support with people that understand what broadcast is, because this is our biggest problem. I hear everywhere, we don't find people. We don't find people. And we find IT guys, but they're not broadcast guys. Yeah. We have broadcast guys, but they're not IT guys. We lose broadcast guys. And they don't come new ones. Yeah. But we need them to explain to the IT guy what you want. And that's a big chunk, a big mess, I believe that. I don't know how we're going to solve that.
I want to move the conversation on a little bit, guys, to the dark side of what this topic might represent in terms of piracy. Does a wider exposure to cloud and virtualized infrastructures expose, high quality, high value production feeds to a greater risk of being hacked? I mean, we spoke about this before, I think, Peter, and the number of different invasions in terms of that feed that you were able to just identify, and there were potentially even more. Does this create a greater level of exposure? And if so, how do you mitigate that?
A greater and not. Somebody took the uplink that came from the stadium that has a normal Biscode protection, and they cracked the Biscode in 10 minutes and they started on Twitter. And we saw it coming and we wanted to trace it, and we saw it up to 250,000 viewers and climbing. So we changed the Biscode. Then you get a text, and 5 minutes later, pop, they're there again because they broke your test of the Biscode again. The same will happen in IT and in IP and in IP distribution, but we have much more ways to protect. We have much more ways to show from where it's coming. So maybe we can narrow down a bit more. Again, I'm not an IT guy. I don't understand how these things work. But I believe we can secure more. The connections that come from one point to the other are much more secure. So there you will be protected. Look, piracy will stay. We can't stop it. And it comes from the most crazy places that I don't even understand why they do it. It's a hobby. Yeah. It's a passion. Yeah. But will IP stop it? We can slow it down. We can maybe narrow it down, but we can't stop it.
Moritz, what do you think?
So I'm not a piracy expert on that. So on that topic, I have to defer to Peter. Nonetheless, I think that within IP there are a lot of opportunities of securing and also marking your signals, obviously, and then you have the opportunity to also take those things down. Also working together with the platforms to so that they do their part already of taking those things down automatically has come a long way. But I agree with Peter in the fact that there will always be someone that just has the itch for intercepting your streams, and there will always be some opportunity of doing so, and you just have to be quick enough in order to take it down.
Yeah. They're crazy ideas. Huh? Yeah. I get somebody in my office, he says, we're going to stop all contribution, all the payments. We're going to put everything open on air, and we're going to make money out of the data we gather from the people. You go against every model we are looking at. And he's convinced. I said, fine, do the thing, but last time in my office, I don't need
It's a prevalent influence, right, in the thinking, and it drives radical thinking like that.
And he was really sure.
Interesting.
Do it.
I mean, 1 year ago, right, we had everyone talking about blockchain.
Yeah.
And what comes along with that technology is microtransactions. So instead of, and again, not advocating this, but instead of paying large fees for rights holders, you can do microtransaction based on reach. So does that eliminate the piracy? Well, let's see, but it would allow you then... or it would limit the risk for someone distributing the rights, because they would receive obviously or they would need to pay a loyalty based on just based on the fact how much their audience is. So there are ideas also going forward of how you can circumvent those things, but in general, I think the current model obviously inspires people to also crack that.
Yeah, they've got a totally different level of motivation.
Yeah. We come also in a world where the prices of acquisitions and rights are like insane.
Yeah.
And also that needs to be addressed a bit more, that if we want to give quality to our viewers and we want to buy something outside, we should buy a fair price, but not insane prices where we need to then elevate our prices towards our clients or our viewers. And it's a circle. Eh? If we don't get out of all these things, then we bid for something and then our competitor goes 60% above us. Why? Yeah. Just go 5% above us and you have it. No, then comes in a statement, we can pay this. And we're like, this is not right. This is, we need to be very careful there. And that's a part of this whole chain that is going around.
If we're talking about things at a commercial level, at a strategic commercial level, here's a question for you guys. If the more traditional infrastructure that we're familiar with OB vans and a lot of capex spent on investment and the infrastructure associated to contractual periods, contractual engagements, do you think that there's a risk with shorter contractual periods and less of that upfront capex being spent, that there's a greater risk of customer churn?
Customer churn? Can you elaborate?
If people are locked into contracts from a longer perspective with the assets associated to purchasing OB vans, etc., will there be shorter contractual periods when it comes to more on-demand type infrastructure that can be turned on and off, or will there be an expectation that there are shorter contractual periods?
On a technical point of view, then commercially, centralization of services is key. Is the only way forward, especially in a country like ours. We have 2,000 kilometers between two stadiums, and we fly people around Saudi Arabia all the time. So we need to centralize. We need to maximize our services, and that's the only way we can move forward. And yes, there needs to be a commitment and a long-term commitment. Otherwise, nobody can survive this. Because that's the disadvantages of a centralized installation. You can't just pick it up and go to somewhere else. But on the other hand, it's the only way forward. We can't pay, and don't shoot me, Broadcast Solutions, but we can't pay 20 OBs. It doesn't fit anymore I don't get it in my brain anymore. I can't build an OB anymore. I need to, a few, but it doesn't mean that the system integrators lose their jobs. But we just move into another model. And that model becomes very important, but that needs a long-term commitment from everybody, because we build the network, so the long-term commitment on renting that network or deploying that network is key, but then you need a long-term commitment from your football federations or whatever federation. On the other hand, we do at the moment 300 football games per year. That's the Premier League in Saudi. Next season we're going to do 1,000. because we have a second league, we have a third league, and we have a female league now. So there's 1,000 games. What we can do is we can not dictate, but we can request from the federations to play on different days. And then we can maximize our remote services. That's the only way we can start to monetize again and start to be in balance with our budgets.
Yeah, and for us, I think so. We need our partners, right? We need to have a long-term commitment, because without our partners, the whole system that we're trying to build doesn't work. So the core functionalities, I think, just work if you have a long-term relationship with your partners. But obviously, what you're referring to there is the commodity services around this. They can be switched on and off in an easier way. And yes, there is the expectation that I don't have only one-way doors where I have to make a decision now and have to carry that decision for the next 6 to 10 years. Yeah. There is the expectation that if I select the playout system today and next year I see it doesn't work as I expected it to, that I'm able to change that. Yes, that's true, but then also within the cloud services, it's easier to build those things. And it's then on the investment side also not that big of an investment. But when I look at the production hubs that we are building, obviously we are also looking into the possibility of having more centralized productions, not just one central location, because there are less people that are willing to spend their lives driving to one central hub from all around Germany, or driving to all different stadiums every weekend, every stadium. So there's less people that are willing to do that. So being able to have a more flexible way and having multiple production locations where people can commute to, making their life easier, and also giving them a better work-life balance on that side is quite important for us. But those things that we build there also need to be long-term commitments. That's not nothing that you can, where you say, all right, for the next year I build this, and then I move out and go somewhere else. That doesn't work.
I want to make sure we address this before we run out of time, because the people dimension of what cloud and virtualized environments bring, obviously, again, dramatically change an aspect of what people expect when they take an occupation in OB broadcast engineering, right? Spending the entire weekend away from home, regularly away from the family. And now they can do at least some of the jobs that they used to have to sit in a van and do, and they can do that from home, right? How much, in your opinion, does that change the landscape when it comes to talent attraction into your businesses?
So I can only take a look at this from a personal perspective and also from what we've heard from the industry. And it looks like this is much more attractive to people than, so I think there is a certain type of people that want to go to every different stadium and want to produce in every different stadium, because it's very attractive of doing so. I mean, I've joined the sports industry because I'm attracted to what's happening in the stadiums, and it's just, it also fills you with pride to be involved in something like this and be there, right? But this only carries on for a certain amount of time, and to have that carry on for like forever and is very rare. And in order to address a bigger talent pool, I think the working environments also need to change and need to adapt, because I think there's both aspects that are very interesting. People that want to go to the stadium and want to be involved, and that should also still have the opportunity of doing so, because in the end, we are providing a live signal to fans that want to see an emotional sport, and having the people that work on site be filled with pride in producing so also allows them to produce a better product for the fans. But nonetheless, we also need to address the fact that the talent pool is shrinking, and the talent pool is shrinking also because of the working environments, and cloud offers the possibility of not having to bear all those burdens for every weekend.
Peter, what do you think?
Well, I think a lot. So yeah, first of all, centralization means we can have better people. We can do more with less. We need our cameraman. We need technical people on ground. But I can do a whole weekend football with 4 directors maximum, and with a small pool of EVS operators, slow-mo operators. because I centralize them. And if we can adjust the agenda of the games, they can do 2 games per day, easily, without a problem. People say 3, I think 2 is more than enough. It's also still a creative job, and I believe 2 is more than enough. The cloud part creates a whole different environment where you can work much more remotely, where your director can, and we do it a lot, where your director sits in Jeddah and your producer sits in Riyadh and the technical team sits in Dubai and the commentator sits in DC and the other commentator sits in Egypt. So there you create something completely new, and this is where we focus a lot on, where we can maximize the quality of our product with minimum cost. And that was something was not possible before. We do the NFL games. Every game is done with 2 commentators, and they're sitting on other parts of the world. And this would never be possible without the cloud environment. So there is a big saving and an upgrade in quality also.
Absolutely. Okay, final question, guys, before we open up to the audience to see if there's anything they would like to ask you. If the migration to the cloud could be seen as a transformative moment in the industry, or as you said earlier, Peter, one that needs to be simultaneously managed because it's not transformative, they exist in parallel to each other, what are the key stages that you would advise companies making that transition to consider as guys who have already started that journey?
So, sorry. So for us, they are very interested to hear your view about this. But for us, I think there are those commodity services that you can already start building around. As I said, for example, MUM service, a playout service, cloud-based editing services, automated clipping services, and so on and so forth. All of those things can be migrated into the cloud. It doesn't affect, it adds quality to what you do. And then on top of that, I would go into the direction and say, all right, start running POCs in parallel to what you do if you have the opportunity and the budget to do so.
Yeah.
Because there are, if we take a look also at the vendors around here, there is already enough out there in order to set those things up, in order to set up fully based cloud productions, and then try to iteratively align with your business goals and also the quality that your service needs to offer. So, as I said, I would always start commodity service around that. Would be my first stage because that's easily doable. Set everything up that it is cloud enabled, and then start iteratively with smaller services that we want to add to it for the global production chain.
We all tech guys, and we want to build the most beautiful tech environment. But maybe we need to listen first to the people that need to make the content, then look at the organization, and then see what fits where. And I believe that's a lot of times forgotten by us sometimes because we want to make the coolest stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important to look at your organization, where you want to go in the OTT or social media. Clipping is a very important part, but you want to control your clipping, that everything that goes on air is correct. Distribution, MUM systems, I mean, all the things are there. And I believe we have so much tech to use. We need to listen to the people that need to use the tech and need to create the content. And that balance is very important. And that will say that cloud services are needed in your organization or not. I believe everybody should start to look at it. Even if it's only some contribution and distribution and trying some things out. Giving some young guys the possibility to edit remote and all these things. Looking at data and creating data and importing data. But I believe, again, listen to the people that need to work with it, and that will determine what you're going to use and what you need to focus on.
Guys, thank you for taking my questions. I now want to invite people from the audience. If you've got any questions that you'd like to extend to either Moritz or Peter, if you raise your hand, I'm not sure if we've got some microphones around to hand out.
I have the tech. Good. Oops.
One here.
Hello, thank you very much for this very fruitful panel. It looks like a lot of this is software driven. The software industry has got a very different pace to what we're doing. Here, the trucks take months to build. The software people, their pace is more weeks than months or years. How do you see those two universes, those two worlds joining together?
Yeah, but they still need to test their software. Huh? And it still needs to be debugged, and it still needs to be integrated, and then we get the APIs, and then we get the, no, it's not my fault, it's his fault. And I mean, the time is still there, and the quality control is still there. Again, we rely on another type of people that have a completely type of conversation. If I want to have a red button as the mute instead of a dark white button and a gray button when it's non-muted, as we have green and red, till today it's not green and red, so it means these guys don't understand what the simple facts are. And the part where it becomes a human, something to usable for us. So I understand 100% they can debug in a few days' time, and they can add services in a few days' time, but it also takes time to make sure that it works in the whole ecosystem and not in one place, because you add something here and it goes wrong there. And then you need to debug that one, and then it goes wrong there. And that's another vendor, so we need to talk with another vendor, and we are 2 weeks later. So it's a journey. It's a journey.
And in the end, both systems have to work together, right? So everything that you need still from a hardware perspective needs to be integrated with what you do in the cloud as well. So obviously, if you see the different time cycles when it comes to the development efforts, software is normally much faster, but that also is the fact because it's running or it's developed iteratively, right? So I don't start with a full-fledged product. I start with the MVP. I then get feedback on that. I see what works, what doesn't. I take a look at the different integration points, just as Peter said. So it's not that software is done in a week anyhow. And in the end, if we take a look at the entire production chain, we still, in the end, it comes down to the fact we still need at least cameras in the stadium, right? And we need some kind of hardware in order to, or where we plug the cameras in and then provide the feeds to somewhere. So both systems have to work together and be integrated into one another, and thus timings needs to align on that fact as well.
Great question, Francois. Thank you. Any other questions? Don't be shy, guys. No?
Oops.
Another one in the front.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Impressive insights. I have a question that maybe needs another panel, but let's try that. We're looking at remote production, centralizing production facilities. When do you think that technology will enable to do edge production? So production in the edge, in the sense of cloud edging. And when we get to producing targeted, personalized content on the edge, what is the role of ChatGPT there?
Yeah, so
I can help you a bit here, guys, because we hosted a chat yesterday around with OTT group, but we were talking about live production systems where, ChatGPT, the accent with which it can generate content and then the fluidity with which that can be weaved in. I think we spoke about it as well, Moritz.
Yeah, so
fast.
When we go into edge production, so need to understand a little bit better your definition on it, but having personalized content on the edge, because I have, for example, a camera that is steered using, it doesn't even need cloud, right? I can have, in the most simple way, I can have an AI camera that is running on the edge already. I can also have a camera which is connected to a data server from a data provider that's then following certain players, and I have a personalized camera following a certain player. All of those things exist already. So in order to have personalized content which is produced on site, I think we have already tools out there that can allow that to happen. I also saw a couple of while ago that you, for example, you've got your virtual camera feeds, right? That you have a panorama picture that you then crop out different cameras. So from round one 8K camera, you crop out I don't know how many cameras in order to produce different feeds there. So I think the tools for that are already there. When it comes to, I'm not entirely sure what you mean with ChatGPT on the edge, but when we talk about how AI systems like ChatGPT and also systems that then can create a voiceover, also maybe even in the tone of a famous commentator and so on, even that is there. So does it already transport the human emotion that I would hope for to see and hear in sports? I think there are still ways to go, but if I want to have a commentator automated based on a generative AI that is there, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun experience, that's the most important part for the moment where we focus on. And there all this can fit in. With fun experience comes data, because data becomes crucial to give the fan more experience than he has today. We have some projects running with fan experience and collecting data on a different level than Delta 3 and all these guys. And we try to move into the AI there and try to create there a new platform for the fans. But I think we still have somewhere to go. But it's a challenging part to look at and to keep on looking at. But in this key part will be data again. And multi-angle view is a very important one. 360 view is a very important one. We're working on it. We're looking at it. And it's one of the parts where we believe we can enhance for the viewers the games. Looking at a game and having the possibility of switch between games, between angles, and have then a chat on the side is cool. And I didn't see the need of it, but then I see people doing it and go like, okay, fine. Being able to add there maybe an AI level that starts to question you, all of you guys, on another level would be cool. So yeah, maybe there are ways to integrate it. How it will come and where it will come. The 8K camera you talk about is something we're going to use actively in productions. And that's an AI version, because it will scale down the cost. The cameraman is always on time, he's always there, he's always right, and the quality is good. So there we will get some parts in also.
Okay. If there's no more questions, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank the panelists that are here, Peter and Moritz. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
I also wanted to take a moment just to recognise another panellist that we were going to have here today, Tim Achtenberger from Sportcast, who sadly couldn't be here because one of his sons is sick, so we hope that his son recovers well and that he's back in action soon. Guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Roland will be hosting panel number 2 in half an hour, which is looking from the vendor's perspective, but I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this panel and that you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much.